Okay, today we'll cover the HTTP module and then the interceptor. Okay, so what is the use of the interceptor in while we are working with the APIs? Okay, basically HTTP module we use for making API calls, like backend API calls, and interceptor we use for intercepting those requests. Like if you want to add some extra header, or if you want to add authentication related tokens to the each request in your entire application, right? So in that case we use interceptor. But first let's go back to the building blocks of Angular, right? So in building blocks, right, so we have all these important features like building blocks of Angular. And we covered modules, we covered components, we covered directives and pipes, and then data binding, routes. Yesterday we covered templates, and then we covered services, also the metadata, and we saw dependency injection in the services, right? So also we listed out along with the building blocks, we listed out the some of the important modules, right? So we covered forms module, we covered reactive forms module, and then we covered the router module, and then the common module where we have the structural directives, right? The ng ng switch, and some default pipe like pipes like lowercase, uppercase, title case, currency pipe, date pipe. So all these things basically part of this module. Now we are left with this last module, HTTP client module. Okay. So in order to use this, we have to import this, right? We saw the examples wherever we use these modules, we have to import that module into our modules. It can be a feature module or it can be app module. First, in order to use a forms module, you have to import it. If you want to use router module, you have to import it. And the same way, common module, reactive forms module. At the same way, we have to import HTTP client module into our app module to use the HTTP service. Okay, HTTP client service. Now, let me go back to this page. So the HTTP client basically they added in Angular 4, okay, and then ever since they're basically refining it, adding some changes, little changes to increase the performance and fixing some bugs, right? But it was added in 4.3. Now coming back to the setup. So here the first thing, right? First thing as we discussed, we have to import this module into your module. Okay, here it is app module. It can be your feature module, it can be any other module also. Only thing is here it is being used in app module. That's the reason we have to import inside the import section, okay, for this module, app module. Now it is imported, then all the services and all the directives, if there are any directives, right, so they'll come into your application. They are basically available to use, okay. But HTTP client module comes with this service called HTTP client, okay. Once you import this HTTP client module into your import section, your modules import section, then HTTP client service will be available for you to use, okay. So now what he does is, like, he created a service called user service, and then he injecting this one HTTP client. Okay, this is part of the HTTP client module. Once you inject this service, then you have access to all of its methods, right? So in order to make a get call to the API, okay, this is some sample API. So in order to get content or JSON from this API, we are using the get API, okay, get method. So when you make this call, you'll get the response of this API, okay. So once you get that response, then you can basically use that in your component. So how can you use this? Now how can we make this get call from our component? So we have to inject this service, the user service, into our component. So here it is the app component. We have to inject it here, and then we have to basically call the get users method. Okay, get users method, this one. So once you call that method, and HTTP client service methods always return an observable. Okay, so they always return an observable. So this get method will return an observable. Now here, so if it is getting, if we are getting observable, then we have to subscribe to get that response, right? That data part. So that's the reason we subscribe to that observable, and then we get the response object. So here we are printing it directly. So it will just print it, right? It will not show in the page. It will just print it. Now, uh, when we run this application, right? So the JSON is getting printed from that API. So that is what being shown here, right? So this is just for representation purpose. But let's say you are getting this response from the API, but you want to display that data in the component, right? So component HTML. So this is not just for printing. Basically, we are getting the API data to show on the page, right? So for that purpose, we have to create an object, okay, like a TypeScript class or TypeScript interface to represent this data. Okay, so we have around 10 students data here, right? So 1 to 10, and each is having ID, name, username, email, address, and some other fields also, right? So only few fields are getting displayed here. Now what we can do is we can create a interface or class, then we can define all these fields here. Okay, so we have ID, just like here we have name, and we have username, email, address, and address is again a sub object, right? So address is having is a again like a sub object here. So it will have some other fields also. What field is it having? It is having all these fields: street, site, street, suit, and city, zip code, and it has a geo object, and it again has two fields, and then phone, website, company. Okay, phone, website, company basically part of this level. Okay, not the sub level. And company is again a sub object. It has three fields and age, right? So your API, right? This API where we have this URL, right? So this API returns all these fields, all these fields. So now in order to use this interface, what we have to do is, while you are returning the value from this get users method, okay, the same user service, we change a little bit on this get users method, right? So if you go up and see, get users is plain and simple here, right? We change a little bit so that it returns some value. It returns basically what value? It returns an observable, right? So it returns observable, so the return type is mentioned. So what kind of observable it will return, what kind of value it will hold, right? So it will hold the user type of value, user type object, right? So user is basically an interface. Interface nothing but it will have list of fields, nothing else. So now it is returning observable of type user. Okay, user array. So it is returning user array, and so in order to typecast to this one, right? So basically we have to after get we have to use this syntax, or like the Angular brackets, to mention what kind of value it will return. Okay, so get will return observable of type user array. Okay, of type user array. So now whenever this one returns the data, it will give us the user objects, right? User objects, list of objects. Now we go back to the component, and then we inject the same service, and then we do some little change here, right? So we subscribe again same way as shown in the above, but in the response, earlier it was just any object, right? So it doesn't have any type, any specific type. But here what we did is we mentioned it to user array. Okay, user array, array of users. Okay, and then this dot http dot get, then user array. Sorry, yeah, here. So after subscribing, response type is of user array, right? So and then we are printing it. Basically, there is no difference here, right? So whatever we are printing here, so it is array of 10 earlier, and now also it's array of 10, and the same values will be there. Only thing is we have a better way of representing this data. Okay, now if we have this user data, right? So basically we can go to the go to the component HTML, and then we can basically display the data using the user object. Okay. Okay, this is not required. Actually, he created a base user, and then he created user and implements base user, and then he did all these things, which is not required in order to show object this way. Okay, so just leave that example, but for our case, right, till here is good. Till showing this data is good, or we can represent this data in UA as well, right? So it's fine. But in order to make it useful, let's find if this API is still working. So if it is still working, we can use the same API in our example also. Okay, cool. It is still working, right? So we are getting this JSON data from this API, user's API. Now we can use same data object to represent in our UI. Okay. So let's go to our application, and let me remove this. So now let's go to our app component. It is good. We don't have anything extra here. Now let me go to the app module. Okay. The first step is to import our module, HTTP client module. Okay. So now client module is imported. So the second step is create a service. Okay. So what kind of service we have to create? Let's create. So it is returning some data, right? So let's create a person service. So basically, it is returning person data, right? So person name, username, email, and address, right? So phone number. So let's create a person service. Okay, let's create a service with the name person. Ng generate service person. Okay, it created person.service.ts. Okay, here it is. So it is having an empty class data, right? So empty service. Now what we have to do? We have to inject the HTTP client service, right? So we can say HTTP and then HTTP client. This one we have to import. Okay, import is done. Now let's create a method. Okay, get person's data. Okay, so what this will do is this will basically take that HTTP object and call get. So if you see here, we have all these methods, right? HTTP will have all these methods. Get is for get API call, and post is for posting data, posting form data. Put is for putting data, and patch is for updating data. Head is for making no, sorry. Options call is for making options API call, and delete it for deleting data, right? So all these API calls the HTTP client service offers us. So for now, let's use the get method. Okay, HTTP.get, and what is the API we have to use? We have to use this API. Okay, let me copy that URL and put it here. Okay, that is done. So now let's go to, let me copy this and let me go to the app component, and in the app component, let me comment this, all these which are not being used. So in the constructor, we have to inject our service. Okay, person service. Okay, imported. Now done. So I have to use this reference. Let's use it in the ng client. Okay, this dot person service dot get person's data. Okay, so what this will return? This will return an observable. Okay, so for that purpose, let me call the subscribe method, and which returns a response, right? So let me say response, and here let me print console.log of response. Okay. Okay, because this method is not returning anything, it is complaining. Okay, so now let's take this. What kind of value it will return? It will return an observable. Okay, let me copy this and mention here. It will return an observable of type any. Let me import this. It's showing some error. Declare type in error ordinary must return. Oh, okay. I have to add the return statement. Okay, all good. So now you can remove this also. Now let's go to the app component. Yeah, so once we added the return statement, so we can basically have all the methods offered by this observable. So we have pipe for each and subscribe. So let's call this subscribe method, and it returns response object, and we are printing the response object. Now let's go to the browser and see whether that is working. Okay, so in the UI we don't have anything yet, because if you go to app component, this is empty. Okay, we are not showing anything. Now let me go to the console and see the response of 10 objects getting printed. Okay, so what I have to do, I just refresh it. Once I refresh it, app component will be rendered, right? By default, app component will be rendered. So in the app component, in onInit, right? onInit will be called when the component is rendered, initialized. So once this app component is initialized, this method will be called. Once we call this method, this will basically call the service method. So the service method, what it will do is, it will basically call this API and return us the observable. So we subscribe to that observable and then print this data when the data comes. Okay, here we print it. So now that data is being shown here. Okay, now let's say let's print this data in the UI. Okay, so let's go here, and what I want to do is, I want to print that data in a table. Okay, so let me copy some HTML table structure in order to save some time. Let me put it here, and then let me say ID, and I want to basically print the data in a table. Okay, so ID and name and email and age. Okay, all the we have many columns, or like many fields, but I want to print only these 4. Okay, now I can remove all these, and then let me remove all these. Okay, let me add single TD, and then I'm printing 4, right? So let me print some dummy data to see what it is coming in the UI. Okay, I can see the table is coming. Okay, Now the table is coming. What we can do is we can print that data. So because we are getting an array, right? So we are getting a user array. So user array cannot be printed in single row, right? So each object, each user object must be printed in single row, right? So for that, what we can do is we can use ng for let p or like person of. So we don't have any field in this component, right? So let's add persons. So we have persons object and which is of type array. Okay. So let me do one thing. Instead of printing, I will just assign this persons object equals to this response. So we have to convert it to an array. Or I can basically use the this syntax. Okay, let me say any to hide this error. So we don't have the user object, right? User interface or user object or user class to assign that data or like person class. So we did not create that. So that's the reason I'm using any. Any means any type of object. So this also returns any type of object and I'm assigning this dot persons equal to that array. Okay. Now we have this person's array. Okay. Now let me go to the app component again. And in this for loop, ng for, I can use that because that's an array. And we have to iterate through that array and print the values needed. Okay. First one is an ID, right? Dot ID. Okay. We can see here. We removed that, right? So let me add the printing back here. Console.log of response. Okay, so now we can see what kind of fields we want to see. Print IDs we already have. Now let's take the name part. Okay, so the second field is person dot name. Okay, now let me copy this, and third field is email. Okay, we have email field, and fourth one is age. Okay, we have age also. We have ID, name, we have email, and we also saw age, right? Something is missing here. Let me see here whether we have age or not. Okay, we don't have age field. Then what we can do is we can print, okay, we can print our website data. So let's go here. and let me print website data, and let me change this to website. Okay, now website data is coming. So see here, this is very simple, right? So we have these columns and we have these rows, and because API is returning 10 values, right? So we are able to print in the console where we are getting 10 objects from the API, and we are able to print those 10 rows here in the page. Okay, so you can add some CSS to beautify this page and show it very nicely. But my intention is just to show how this APIs works, right? So calling it and displaying the data. So that's why it is showing like bare minimum HTML, but normally you can beautify it. Okay. So this is just a get a example, right? Getting data example. But we already have other methods as well, like posting data and deleting data, and we have many other things. So in order to do that, we can basically create methods. Okay. In order to create person's data, then you can say create person, and instead of get, it can be a post, right? We don't have the post API here, but normally there will be this post API, and it will take two parameters, right? So first parameter is your API, the post API, and second parameter is the object you are posting, right? So if you want to create a person object, then here it will be your person object. You can basically say something like this, user, and he'll have some name, and was the third field email, something like this, right? So you can basically post that data. So where you are posting the data, you are posting to this URL, right? So and the type is post. So the Angular framework will send this data to this API, users API, post API, so that data will be created in the backend in the database. And then later, if you use this API, right, to get data, and whatever you posted, data will be coming back to your get call. Okay. Also, in order to delete a student, okay, in order to delete a student from the database, you can basically change method to delete, and here instead of post, you can say delete. And delete is like it will take a single URL. It will not take any second parameter, because you'll be mentioning the ID of that person to delete. Okay, maybe you can say something like the ID, and that ID you can basically send from the component itself. Okay, so ID of type number. Okay, so you'll assign you'll append that ID to the end of the URL, and then you'll call it. And the last call is put call. Okay, put call basically to update the existing object. Okay, so you can say put, and put also basically takes two parameters. So okay, what user data you want to share. Okay, post will basically create a object, and delete will delete mentioned object, right? Okay, delete this student whose ID is 1. Okay, that time from the UI you can send this data here, and that person data will be deleted from the database. And for updating data, so if you are updating an existing user, that time you can mention the student ID, which ID you want to update, and then you can send the updated object, and then that object will be updated. Okay, so these 4 calls are very important, because in interviews also interviewer might ask, what are the 4 calls you need for doing these data operations backend? And basically, these are called CRUD operations. Okay, CRUD means C for create. Okay, sorry, C for create, and R for read. Read means basically getting data, and U for update. Okay, put call, and D for delete. So that's the reason these are called CRUD. Instead of put person, you can say update, and here we can say read person data. Let me arrange them in order. Okay, so these are CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. Okay, so we don't have these APIs. That's the reason I'm not showing this example, but we have this this read data, right? So that's the reason we're able to read data. Okay, so let's, and as we discussed for the read, right? So every API returns an observable. Okay, regardless of it's to post, get, or put, all these calls will return an observable. So whenever you are calling these methods, then you have to use the subscribe method. Okay, so yeah, let's keep this one and let's do small change. Okay, in the component to read, I think read person. Okay, so instead of on in it, I'll do one thing. Instead of on in it, I'll create a method get person's data. Okay, so we're doing same thing in this method also, but I want to do that once user clicks a button and fetch and show data. Okay, and I'll have a click event here, and I'll call that method and go to the page and refresh. Okay, nothing is happening because we are printing the headers. These are hard-coded headers. So that's the reason we are able to see this. Okay, let me add some space between this. Let me go to the CSS file and let me add a table header. Padding 10 pixel and TD padding 10 pixel. Okay, I'm adding basically some space. Okay, so now these are coming with some space. Let me change the background as well. Background color as some gray color I want to put, so that will be a, and for this, okay, for this I don't want to add this. Okay, let me add border though. Border 1 pixel solid ash a. Okay, now it is background color is coming from the header. Now what I want to do is when I click on this, then the data should populate. Okay, see, upon clicking it, immediately the data is coming and displaying in this table. Okay, now let's see how this is happening. Okay, let's go to the network and let me refresh. The data will go away. It will wait for this click event. Once user clicks on that, then it will fetch the data and show it. Okay, so network call, let's see what is happening. Okay, I changed to the dynamic calls, right? The Ajax calls, right? So I changed the filter to Ajax calls, or let me go to the all. Okay, let me clear this. Okay, the old calls. Now if I click on it, there will be an API call made to that URL. Let's see in action. See, the user call is made and we get 200 response. If I click on that user's call, it is returning this 10 objects, right? From 0 to 9, 10 objects it is returning, and the same 10 objects I am showing it in the UI. Okay. So whenever I click on it, the calls being made, same calls being made. So any questions here so far?
No, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Then now let me search for another API. Okay. Okay, this is returning some huge data. This is list of public APIs. Okay, we need one API. That's fine. Okay, I think this will work. Okay, this is interesting. Bitcoin price. Tab. Okay, nice. We are getting some response. Okay, so let me go here. Let me go here. Because this is a different API, let me create a different service. Okay. Bitcoin price. Okay, the service name is Bitcoin price. Okay, here it's created. And what I want to do is I want to inject HTTP client. Okay, that's the first step. Private HTTP and HTTP client, and here get price. Okay, or get latest price. And this dot HTTP dot get call we are making, right? And here let me give this one, and let's close this. Okay, basically we have to return this, right? So let me use the return statement, and let me again go to the app component. We have to inject the Bitcoin service here. Private let's say B price, Bitcoin price, and let me import that service here, and we are good so far. Now let me go to the ng on init, and let me say this dot B price dot get latest price. Okay, again this will return an observable, right? So we have to subscribe. Subscribe will give us the response. What is the response object? Let me call result this time. Result, and then here I want to assign that result to some other object. Okay, Bitcoin price object. Okay, let me call this as Bitcoin price object. What is the type? Let me give any. This dot Bitcoin price object equals result. Done. Okay, so now let me take this and go to the HTML and put some tags to show it. Okay, let me show it in a div tag, and what I want to show, Bitcoin price dot where is the Bitcoin price? Yeah, this is the Yeah, this is a price object. Okay. So it is time. Okay, till here it is time. And then we have disclaimer. Till here, chart name is Bitcoin, yeah, BPI. So we have to use the BPI dot BPI.USD dot rate. So let's see if it is printing here. Yes, it is getting printed. Okay, let me change this to let me add some bold tag and say price in USD. Let me add another bold tag and say updated on and now updated on is coming in time dot updated. Okay, time dot updated. That's a hierarchy basically. So this object will hold the entire object, and if you mention b price object dot time, then we are taking this object. Then updated means you are taking this object. Okay, this is a data object, and this one is again the whole object, and then dot bpa means here this object it will take, and inside that we have USD is another object because this is another object, right? Till around here, yeah, till here it's another object. So that's the reason I'm using bpa dot USD dot, and I want to print rate. That's the reason I'm picking the date. Okay, so rate is getting printed here. Now let's go and see. Okay, so price is this much and the price is updated on this date. Okay, let me put a break statement to basically separate it out. Let me put this for better readability. Okay, so this is the price and updated on current time. Okay, you can refresh as many times as you want. If any change in price happens in the Bitcoin server, and this one here will update the price here. Okay. So now if you click on this, again it will fetch this data and show. So basically we are using two APIs. One is to get this data, and second API is to get this user data. Okay. So any other questions? Okay. Well, so now let's go back to our site, right? So this is the HttpClientModule. But if you have a backend APIs for all the CRUD operations, then you can use the post, and you can use the put, and you can use the delete, and you can use the get API, right? So basically get API will be available on the web for free, just like we use two APIs, right? That's the reason we are able to see the get APIs in action. But if I find any simple post and delete APIs, then I'll try to put it in the object. I mean the put it in the code and show it in while we're working on the project, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I think we are already I think it's already 50 minutes. In next class we can cover the interceptor. Interceptor is a simple concept. We can cover this interceptor, and then we'll cover this entire topic deployment, right? So in next class we can basically finish at least the Angular topics, all the topics.
Sure, sir. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, if you don't have any questions, I think we can close this session.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.